Welcome to another edition of the Civ Battle Royale. My name is Dawkinzz and let's get to it. Come one, come all, it's the 61st part of the Civ Battle Royale. I'll be your narrator for this part, user X Syracuse. You all may know me from my occasional comments on Civ Battle Royale or my annoying banter and failed roasts on the CBR's Discord chat. I'd love to thank TPangolin for this opportunity and I'm very grateful. Quick note before we begin, I am flying blind through this album, and every slide you see is also the first time I'm seeing it as well. This is done so I don't spoil anything throughout this part. Now, this amazing cover slide is made by user The Benno, hey, like Benno, 4th time's the charm, and showcases the remaining civs at the beginning of this part. Nobody but Japan, Hawaii, and Persia seems particularly happy about being so close together, but that's probably just because they're happy to even be alive. Oh, what a treat, praise TPang! Neppy's right-hand man has bestowed upon us an animated map of the progress of the CBR Mark II so far, which you can find in the comments below. Of interest, the mysterious disappearance of Ireland, the flip of Sydney, by Mali, by France, by Morocco. South America doing nothing most of the time. On to the map! The only real changes after part 60 is the noticeable lack of red in the Western Hemisphere, and a much darker green has been introduced in the Arabian Peninsula. Also, apparently brown is the new maroon, and Sparta has captured 4 cities from Armenia, including the Israeli capital of Jerusalem. I wonder what ETSI 1991 will have to change on their next map after the conclusion of this part. The Boers remain in first place again. They declared a war last part and won easily within its XCOM range, but yet, just like the Sopa War, refused to actually do anything. Although I do commend Ethiopia for sucking up to Paul Kruger of the Boers, so much for him to wake up and declare a war with them. Good job, Haile of Ethiopia. I'm gonna butcher Haile Selassie's name. Selassie, whatever. I can't do it. Anyway, although according to the power rankings, Ekanik of the Inuit is catching up to the Boers and nearly took the #1 spot this week. The next victim of the Armenian conquest of Sparta is the Armenian city of Gyumri, falling, and the city right next to it, the capital of Yerevan. Tiridates III of Armenia must be sweating by now, as his barely existent defense is faltering. Also of note is the fact that the final Arabian stronghold of Jericho, which in our timeline is the oldest continuously inhabited walled city in the world, fun fact, 3 French units appear in the Spartan territory, a trebuchet, a Great War infantry, and a Gellius, southeastwards of the infamous city of Devin, Party Pope height. The last legion will swim in the Black Sea, and Sibir has developed cyber subs, as shown in the Caspian Sea. It appears that the Lion of the North is plotting against Stalin of the USSR. Now, why this is, I haven't a clue, and I'm not a gambling man, but if I were, I would guess that Gustavus isn't pleased that Stalin pretty much gave Iceland all that French clay instead of giving it to Sweden. Although, no offense to our beloved Semiramis, Civilization 5 spies don't get the most reliable information most of the time. I don't know what's going to be played out between these two civs, but I want blood. Also of note, Sweden has mechanized artillery, which I believe is brand spanking new from the research labs of Trondheim, Sigtuna, and Stockholm, which are currently being deployed towards the Swedish border with the Soviets. And both Sweden and Finland are building future world improvements. Good jobs, Gustav of Sweden and Top Kek of Finland. There shall be no more peace for Australia, according to the infamous Agent M, who reports to the sub that Henry Parks of Australia is plotting against Mirwais Hotak of Afghanistan. Way to kick someone while they're down, Parks. In other news, Sydney has fully recovered with a massive 36 population. I believe this takes the prize as the second largest city in the world, only behind the Chilean city of Copiapó, which has reached the milestone of 40, and an actual pop higher than that. Also, looking around, the only future world units I see are drone UAVs, which are located west of Brisbane, and a few advanced destroyers in the east of Sydney and Brisbane. Also, it seems Parks may have caught the same bug as the Buccaneers, Iceland and Sweden and other civs, and is building an excess amount of carriers. I do see quite a few floating around here. Please press F to pay respects for Harun al-Rashid of Arabia, who's just been eliminated by Haile Selassie of Ethiopia. I'm not really good with eulogies, guys, and honestly, I can't remember much about Arabia, what they did this game. Although for what I do know, Arabia was a civ with really good tech. Look at the improvements by Jericho, and did wage war upon Israel, but other than that, they just kind of sat there, then got gangbanged by Ethiopia and the Boers. A truly terrifying combo after Finnish bombing raids. I honestly feel a little sorry for Harun, but in this game about spilling blood and nuking the shit out of millions of people, it's honestly just the circle of life. Meanwhile, the last Arabian helicopter tries to evacuate the last workers, and among them Harun al-Rashid himself. But apparently crossing the Red Sea is tougher in practice than thought. In the background, the Armenian city of Artashat goes to Sparta. Yep, Artashat goes to Sparta. But Gyumri is Armenian again. Armenia has some very interesting names for these cities. Still, Armenia is stuck with 3 cities with a grand total of 8 land military units to defend, and nearly half of these units are artillery. I'd be worrying for Tiridates Armenia fans. We now get a look at Inuit-occupied Canada, in which cities are already being annexed, like Winnipeg and Ottawa. This doesn't look good for, well, anyone, really. Also, the Inuit have developed organic infantry, a monster of a unit. Also, note Vietnam and the Inuit have open borders, and the Trungs of Vietnam are pulling a Boer and have begun filling Inuit lands with their own units. Iceland has also developed Vertals. This is a huge slide. I'm not going to do an accent. Slide. Sorry. Poor impressions. So let's dissect it as best we can. Korea has XCOMs. This is a huge development for them, giving them a huge technological advantage over all of their neighbors, even Australia. There may also be a few new units here, but I'm not 100% sure. Australia is currently plotting against the ghost of Lester B. Pearson, according to our beloved Agent M. Mongolia has completed the Manhattan Project, something he had been striving to do since the Great Conflict, when nukes were dropped on his own people. The wars complete another wonder, which I can't quite tell what it is at this moment. Uh-oh, I think the Lion of the North, Gustavus Adolphus of Sweden, may be a little over his head on this one. Currently he's plotting against Ekanik of the Inuit. Also featured in this slide is Finnish arsenal ships, a valuable leg up on the Swedish. Also, Kekkonen has carpeted Icelandic France, as he had already done with the British Isles. Also, drone UAVs are spotted in Finnish territory. And possibly the absolute worst of all the current plotting, we have Henry Morgan plotting against the last Legion of Rome. Though I doubt anything would come from this war, it's still a terrifying prospect that anyone can destroy our favorite exiled unit, along with the Ashanti pikemen, of course. As previously stated, Genghis Khan has completed the Manhattan Project, and along with that, I see modern armor and helicopter gunships floating around Mongolian territory. Meanwhile, the Yakuts are actually building an army, so good for them. But still, half of their territory is home to Finnish overflow, much like Icelandic France and British Isles. Sivir, meanwhile, I believe had just rolled out their first Vertals, which can be seen below the city of Barnaul. So that's what the Boers just built. AngelNet, one of the best wonders added by Future Worlds. It is a modern red fort. Doubling the strength of the already powerful utility fog generator, this wonder will make every city a fortress, according to TA Knight's Future Worlds guide. This wonder will pretty much make them impenetrable. Also, remember what I said about Sydney being the second largest city in the world? Yeah, I lied. Apparently, as Mbanza Congo, owned by the Boers this time around, is currently sitting at a pleasant 42 population. That makes me claustrophobic just thinking about it. The Boers in Arabia have peaced out, not that it matters anyway. All the Arabian clay is now Ethiopian clay, which is almost nearly carpeted. Yes, there are holes in Ethiopia's carpet, but not many, and most that'll probably be filled with a part or two. Meanwhile, Hawaiian peacekeepers struggle to get home, and the infamous drunken Mongolian prophet stumbles towards Addis Ababa on horseback. This time, the Lion is plotting against Leonidas of Sparta. This is certainly one Gustavus of Sweden could chew, but it would not be a walk in the park like the USSR would. Meanwhile, Brazilian peacekeepers arrive in former Carthaginian lands. Little late there, buds. Also, the Bucks in Australia are apparently friends now, as they have open borders. Gyumri falls back to Sparta, which is really a bad sign for any Armenian fans. Yeah, all three of you. I only see 4 Armenian land units and half our artillery still. This is not looking good for my friends Tiridates. Also, look in Persia. Its tiny cities, besides Persepolis, are all being surrounded by units from other countries. Ethiopia, Mongolia, I even see a Sri Lankan anti-aircraft gun and an Afghani paratrooper. Also, it seems the Hunnic workers are now working for Darius. 3 of the last Canadians, 2 destroyers, and a caravel can be seen on the slide, which looks like they will be able to escape the evil clutches of the Inuit. I'm also going to call your attention to the Bucks Navy. Currently it is comprised of a shit ton, which is a scientific term, of carriers, a decent amount of advanced destroyers, and a lot of workers and bazookas, as well as a few nuclear submarines and battleships. That's not a good thing for the Bucks, as most of their naval rivals enjoy cyber subs and arsenal ships, including Iceland and the Inuit. While the Boers continue to fill up former Mali, other civs scrambled for the living space of former Morocco. Currently, Brazil and Australia are the main competitors. I really can't see anything else in the slide of note other than the fact that Sparta may have just gotten submarines. I really don't know if that's new or not. Meanwhile, a Mali artillery floats by the pirate island Kumana. Oh no, Tiridates of Armenia must be terrified now, facing enemy declaration of war by 2 massive superpowers, the USSR and Japan. I know I'm sounding real sarcastic right now. Actually, the last known time Japan declared war was upon the Sioux, who was then eliminated by the Canadians who declared war later. Guys, who knows, Japan could be the CBR's Grim Reaper to rival sitting Jesus. In that case, then, on this earth, the devil has won, which is obvious when the massive amounts of death in this world so far are over 1 billion. Armenia still also has only 2 cities, Yerevan and Bukhara. Wow, the USSR declaration of war may be slightly more relevant than we think, as they currently have 3 units just north of the Armenian capital, and possibly more on the way. They actually may be able to snipe a city after the Spartans put the effort into sieging it. Now that, folks, is what the CBR is all about. As spices are banned by the World Congress, we also get a very nice view of South America. Of note, Chile is recovering from the Australian War quite nicely, building up a semi-carpet, also starting to repair its navy. And a Brazilian declaration of war, they could probably hold the line pretty well, which is good for them. Chile and Brazil have open borders, signifying friendship, although that may not last, as it looks like Chile has citadel bombed the Neuquén. There. Are you happy with my pronunciation? Anyway, which has probably angered Pedro of Brazil. Chile and the Bucks also have open borders, and the pirates, who barely have an army in their South American holdings, could end up being host to either an Aussie or Chilean guest army in the near future. Brazil's carpet is massive, but not super technologically advanced, as no future world units can be seen. Olives were also nearly banned, and TPang has graced us with the core shot of Sparta, which is probably celebrating with a leg day twice as long as normal as usual, as Leonidas' empire must be filled with olives. Have a good leg day, Spartans! Everybody loves to plot against the last legion and Ashanti pikemen, as that's who nearly every civ seems to want to eliminate. I pity the poor units who just float around on bodies of water, not doing anything with their lives, other than maybe a history exhibition every once in a while. Yerevan is taking damage, but Leonidas has only brought helicopters to the siege. If Stalin could just move his artillery and get one of his other 2 units in there, he could possibly snipe the city. I could only imagine the rejoice of USSR fans, everyone, and also the memes that would be sure to come out of this. Apparently, Henry Parks of Australia is plotting against Leonidas of Sparta. He does have those units in Morocco. I think that's what the Bucks are calling it these days. So he may be able to take a city or 2, but it'd probably not be permanent. But holy crap, the Digger carpet is terrifying. Sure, they're a little weak in comparison to other, powers and what they're wielding, and he doesn't really have many ships floating around, though there are some. Sometimes, though, quantity beats quality. Henry Morgan of the Buccaneers is also getting his plotting pants on. He seems to be plotting against Samuel Houston of Texas, hoping to get a new exclave called Arston. I can't see Texas putting up much of a fight, but again, the only pirate ships I see in the slide are carriers and nuclear submarines. The Bucks are in the same predicament as Australia, a naval civ with outdated naval technology. But unlike the Aussies, the Bucks don't have the science output growing exponentially, so I'm not so sure about the rum-drinking pirates' chances. Sparta has peaced out with Armenia right when Tiridates was about to keel over and die. Honestly, Leonidas, that was really stupid. Yes, you would get the elimination bonus, but you would still get a capital, a valuable thing to have nowadays, and more clay to the carpet. It really wasn't smart. Rip Spartan Yerevan, rip Soviet snipe of Yerevan. A Future Worlds wonder not built by the Boers? That's impossible! You heard it here, folks. The Vietnamese have built a wonder called the Citadel Station. A wonder that gives... oh, I don't know. But TPang will tell me in the next slide anyway. Anyway, Vietnam's carpet is still really scary and really big. And it seems that Vietnam is right on the edge of getting all the new fancy Future World units. So good for them. Aha! The Citadel Station is a wonder that improves the yields of scientist and engineer specialists. More specifically, it gives +2 science and gold from scientists, and +2 gold in production from engineers. A nice wonder, though compared to other wonders, cough, Skynet, cough. I don't know why I just didn't cough. It's not so great, but it's still a nice thing to have, I guess. Meanwhile, let's take a moment to appreciate how fucking awesome that art is for the Citadel Station, shall we? It seems like Henry Morgan has finally decided to train his workers in scrubbing Fallout, and since all the world's powers are not afraid to use nukes if need be, this is a good thing for Henry, as rebuilding infrastructure will be critical in the coming parts, to be able to keep churning out units to fill in the holes made by war. Meanwhile, more Aussie units are also being shipped into the area, though through the port of Rabat. Agent Semiramis actually received some real intel, and the Lion of the North has declared war upon Ekanik of the Inuit. Now, I really cannot tell if this was just a boldness flare showing its ugly head here, or the beginning of a coalition against the Inuit for the elimination of Canada. A SOPA-esque coalition could really hurt the Inuit, especially if civs like Iceland, Yakutia, and the Buccaneers join in. Even Mexico and Texas could play a role in the coalition like that. And don't forget the Blackfoot. If a SOPA revival against the Inuit does occur, there are a few civs that most likely will not join in, like Australia, Vietnam, Mexico, and the Blackfoot, who all share open borders with Ekanik and his White Walkers. Also, it seems that the beginnings of a branch of the Ice Sheet Fleet have begun on the Atlantic, as evident by 2 cyber subs. And even more former Canadian cities are being annexed, the newest being Halifax, Fort Royale, and Kitchener. Great name, Pearson. The Boers have completed yet another wonder, the Digital Emancipation, which provides production, science, and culture based on information-era buildings within the Empire. The Future Worlds Guide by T.A. Knight said he had no idea on how this works. Thanks for the help, T.A. My guess is that you get one of each in every city per building that the Future Worlds mod introduces into that city. This could be very powerful in large empires like the Boers, Sibir, Inuit, Vietnam, and especially Australia, but the wonder has gone to the Boers. Also of note, the Brazilian units floating towards Boer territory. The Kimberley have completed the Manhattan Project, following Mongolia's lead from earlier this part. The now rump state of Kimberley had a chance to do stuff again and take out Sri Lanka, but the damn Aussies intervened and took them over instead. That's probably the fate of Kimberley until Vietnam, Australia comes and conquers them. But hey, as of now, the Kimberley are friends with Henry Park, so all he needs to worry about is Vietnam. Also, the Kimberley have a workable Krakatoa, which is nice, I guess. Apparently declaring war upon the Inuit isn't enough for the Lion of Sweden, and he still hasn't had enough and is currently plotting against Napoleon. Sweden, I really hate to break it to you, but France has been dead for a while now, and all that currently remains are a few units in Spartan territory. Henry Morgan of the Buccaneers is currently plotting against Leonidas of Sparta. That would be another really good war for the Bucks, and they could easily pick up another 2 capitals, Rome and Carthage, with their navy, as well as a few other cities that would give them a really strong lead in the who's technically winning category, and with a total count of 8 capitals, if I'm correct. The Soviet sieges of Yerevan isn't going particularly well, but they have paratroopers now, which would have helped them when Armenia had more land and was completely empty. I still have hopes for them, though. Anyway, Sparta has annexed 3 cities, Hebron, Gyurmi, and Artashat. This is really fun to type and speak, seriously. Leaving only Jerusalem and Tikhonarasurta unannexed from the Armenian conquests. The newest rump state on the cylinder, Armenia, has decided to declare war on another, Tibet. Honestly, there's not much to say here about either civ, other than that Tibet is seriously behind in tech, sporting riflemen. Although Tibet does have more military units than Armenia, which is pretty sad. So let's take the opportunity to look at the Vietnamese army. It's quite large and with divisions and civs all over the cylinder. Vietnam has one of the farthest reaches of power in the CBR. Tibet, seeing the diplomatic middle finger that is the Armenian Declaration of War, declares peace with another diplomatic middle finger, the Yakutian Declaration of War, on them. Honestly, nothing came out of this war, not like anything could have, but it gives us an excuse to get a shot of the Yakut Corps. They have a shit ton of units, but most of them are workers. Apparently Yakutia is building a carpet of civilians, much like Tiridates of Armenia did, before he was nearly swallowed by Spartan. Maybe Yakutia is the next Spartan conquest. Spoilers. Korea has declared war on Hawaii, but no need to fear, Korea has XCOMs for the reach. A one-tile island. Fuck. Anyway, they also have robot infantry, which has appeared just southeastwards of Seoul. Korea is actually looking pretty good right now, and may be able to do some damage on any of their neighbors, except for maybe Vietnam. The only reason I saw that they could do damage on Australia is because Japan is separated from the rest of the Aussies' carpet, but Korea will have to declare war fast. Here's the last of Hawaii, the island of Kanaohe. Korea will probably be able to land some XCOMs. Can they in water? I don't know. And do some damage, maybe. I think. I don't know. If they can get some more ships down here, besides a single submarine, they might be able to do something. I don't know. Anyway, also for those who care, Persia has joined Armenia in declaring war upon the Tibetan menace. Long live Mao, Darius of Persia and Tiridates of Armenia scream. They then probably throw back a shot. Sibir has joined Korea upon declaring war on Hawaii, but unlike Korea, I doubt they'll be able to do anything about it. I think TPang was also trying to show off the Siberian Vertals, but I already covered that. Holy fucking shit, guys! Hype! Everybody, this is the beginning of the future. This must also be the reason why turns are so long. Vietnam has declared war upon Henry Parks in Australia. This is honestly a war that could go either way, folks. Guys, this war will be bloody. I expect nukes to fly, I expect cities to burn, I expect mass genocide, I expect a new civ ball, and it's going to have to be drawn. How this war turns out could change everything. Hype! I sound like an Icelandic soccer announcer. Alright guys, I think I may have broken my caps lock button. Anyway, this slide only shows us the Vietnamese Corps, which doesn't give us much information on what has already happened in this war. In the Vietnamese city of Aioli, which is a delicious mayonnaise substance, drone fighters prepare for war, as do bombers and even nuclear bombs. While no shots have been fired in this war yet, rest assured they will. There will be many, many shots and many, many deaths. Alright. Analysis mode activate. Vietnam seems to have the technological advantage here with advanced destroyers and, well, not having diggers. Australia, however, has the numerical advantage with clearly more units in the immediate distance. Although Vietnam's core is not as far away as Australia's, so that is another advantage for Vietnam. My question is, will Korea get involved? That would be a huge thing for either side of the conflict with XCOMs in play. That could mean all the distance. Here's some damage. Shots have been fired and my son is at 0 health. Australia, don't shoot at me or my son ever again. God, these memes are so dank. Anyway, the Australian city of Mataram, another great name, Ambron and Wangari have also taken massive damage. This war is going to be really good. I can feel it. And diggers are also closing in on my son. Memes, again, come on people. And this war is already favoring Australia. Anyway, I think Vietnam just got mech artillery, and that is good for them. Bombs are being stockpiled on either side in the cities of Manila of Vietnam, Legazpi should be a Spartan city, and Zamboanga something of Australia have all taken damage, and all could flip soon. Australia has also acquired drone fighters, so neither civ has an advantage in the air. Also, the Blackfoot have chosen sides, letting Australian troops move through Olongapo. Honestly, Crowfoot probably only did this to appease a civ so much more powerful than him and could have him killed. Fun fact, the Vietnamese also have open borders with the Blackfoot, as seen in the Mexican standoff in the Rocky Mountains. I think that could be wrong as of part 61. Anyway, Australia has embarked many of their units, but are at a distinct lack of Australian ships, which will seriously hurt them in the long run. I'm laughing right now, just wondering how the power rankers are going to rank these two civs. Both the Vietnamese cities of Cebu and Aioli are in the red, and Aioli may flip, which would be terrible for Vietnam with all of the planes in that city. However, luckily for Vietnam, all I see in this area is Australian embarked units, carriers, subs, one destroyer, one privateer, so that's not really much that Henry Parks of Australia can do by means of capturing cities, but you never know. It seems that the game has crashed attempting to process the game. Anyway, the Australian core, everybody. So I had to go cry over in the corner for a few minutes because that is some scary shit. All of this is currently on its way to the Vietnamese front. If the Trungs want to make it out with a win, they need to work fast, take some cities, then peace out before all of this shit gets there. That's seriously the only way I see the Trungs of Vietnam winning. Although I could see them holding this off, though. We are also greeted with a shot of the Australian Polynesia. This shot is actually only 20 tiles or so to the east, but still shows more of that carpet. Although in this slide I see advanced destroyers and caravels. Good job, Parks, remembering those melee ships. This is the full extent of the Australian carpet, almost spanning the entire Pacific Ocean. This is honestly nightmare-inducing, and I know I'll be feeling it tonight. Just seeing these slides makes me question the Trungs. Do they really think they can beat this? I'm doubtful, but it can be done, I guess. I really like Vietnam, and it's 100% sure that this war will make or break them, either securing them a top 3 position or kicking them out of the top 10. As for Australia, I don't see them leaving the top 10. They're just so large, but this war could possibly hurt them quite a bit depending on who else joins the war and how stupid or smart the AIs are. What the shit? How the hell have the Boers jumped up this much in population? That's legitimately scary. Over 500 million people in the Boer Empire. Must be those great future war wonders. Anyway, welcome to the stats. The top 5 in pop remain the same in population. Boers lead with 528 million. Australia comes second with nearly 300 million, and Vietnam comes third with just over 200 million. Australia has the most quote-unquote land, but the Inuit have the most actual land confirmed. I also want to make a note that I actually did air quotes for that. Nearly everything remains the same, but the Aussies are catching up to the Boers. Also, Vietnam have 450k or less soldiers than Australia, the civ they just declared war on. Smart, Trungs. Very smart. Let us take a look at the dead civs who still have units out there somewhere. Anyone know where the Burma units are? TPang? Anyone? No one? Okay. The Inuit are only one city behind the city count compared to the Aussie Empire, who's sitting at 103. I imagine that the Inuits' tech cost is going through the roof right about now, though. This gives civs like Korea and Iceland a chance to catch up some to the Inuit. The Boers are currently only 2 techs away from the end of the tech tree, which is crazy. Other things to note, Iceland now has 1 tech lead over Korea to become 3rd in technology. A 3-way tie for 5th in technology is between Vietnam, Australia, and Sweden. Sweden has overtaken Finland in tech. A dead civ is a tech leader. The only thing that matters on this slide is that Islam has gained another follower. The party pope's death shall not be in vain. Praise the party pope. Have a balloon, question mark. And here's the religion map. I don't know if anything has changed since last time because I don't look at this. And with that ends another edition of the Civ Battle. Oh, am I just fucking around with you? Yes, I am, because there's bonus content. Holy shit, an extra slide! Praise T-Pang! Praise the Party Pope, and praise Sitting Jesus. Praise, I don't know, Senshi. Yeah, praise Senshi. Praise Denshi. Anyway, according to T-Pang, I started recording the next part, and then I was like, damn! Which is how I imagine he would say it. Well, then I got to the slide, and I went, damn! I am very white. Anyway, both Finland and Sweden have declared war upon the USSR. This is not a war, this is a race between two civs to see who's fastest and sending troops in to slaughter millions of people. We've been saying this for quite a few parts that both Sweden and Finland have to declare war on the USSR to get some free clay, and they finally did it. Together. Don't mind Darius, he's irrelevant, and this also happens to turn after Vietnam declared war on Australia. The culling is upon us, folks, and to think I was just hyping up a Soviet snipe of Yerevan a few slides ago. And here we can see why this war was probably started, because the Soviets citadeled the shit out of Finland and Top Kek didn't like that, although that has been around for many, many parts. Well, at least Finland won't be 100% border gore anymore with the USSR out of the way. That's literally nothing they can do here, but try not to die next part. Kiev is already down to 0 health by Finnish bombing runs, and one paratrooper could do the job. Honestly, I feel this is suicide considering all of those citadels. Again, a few parts ago, but whatever. Stalin probably feels guilty of Napoleon's death and also brought out his notes he took so long ago in the lecture by Alexios Komnenos of Byzantium. Yeah, I'm not going to try to pronounce that again. Stalin, too, wants death by Finland on his tombstone. I actually feel really bad for user Ignis, who just put a lot of effort to make a new USSR Civ ball for the power rankings. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I leave you. I had a really great time narrating this part for you guys, and despite it being a little rushed, I think the narration still turned out pretty good enough. This has been one hell of a part, with 3 new relevant wars being started, and then Sweden showing he has some huge balls by declaring war upon the Inuit. And then the Trungs showing Gustavus of Sweden that they have the biggest balls by declaring war on Australia. They're females too, so they have the biggest ovaries. I betcha that all the male leaders of the cylinder won't feel very great about themselves tonight. Anyway, I hope the USSR and Hawaii don't just roll over and die and put up a decent fight like Morocco did. F. This part may have been pretty good, but I do know one thing. Part 62 is going to go down into the history books. Or maybe the Aussie-Vietnamese War will end up like the Great Conflict. Please, T-Pang, don't do this. We want blood. Anyway, I've been user X Syracuse, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening, morning, or afternoon, wherever on the sphere we totally non-digital people call home. And with that ends yet another edition of the Civ Battle Royale audio narration. My name is Dawkinzz, and this next part will be done by none other than Burger Krieg. We'll see you next time.